Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Victory Leaders Lounge. I'm here with another guest today. His name is Evan Lynn. We're going to get to have a great conversation with him here in a minute. But let me get the promotion out of the way that I do at the beginning of every podcast first, and then we'll hit the ground running. So Victory Leaders Lounge is brought to you by Victory Leadership Coaching, home of the Warrior Leadership Coaching Certification and First-Time Leaders course for new managers. Don't forget to check us out at victoryleadershipcoaching.com. You can also buy our books at amazon.com. The books are Why Organizations Should Develop Their Leaders, a pocket guide, and Warrior Leadership, the journey from coach to entrepreneur. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to all of our videos on our YouTube channel, our Spotify channel, and anywhere that you might see our content. Okay, well, the promotion is over. Evan, I really appreciate you coming on the show, buddy. Would you mind giving a quick introduction to everybody in the audience?
Yeah, of course. No, thanks. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. So just a introduction of myself. So I'm Evan, also, a veteran as well. I served in the Air Force for 9 years. I'm originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Grew up there, was there until I was 20 years old. Um, and That's kind of where my hometown is at. I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee right now. Do a lot of the leadership development space currently within the organizational development. I do a lot of leadership coaching, executive coaching, just anything within leadership development. That's me. That's where I got into. And now, well, I know we'll talk about this a bit more. But previously was in a different role, completely different into the leadership development. This kind of came about with passion, but it just really went on a long journey and went to school for a long period of time as well. And just took that off and started to help other leaders, taking what I've learned in the military, what I've learned in life, and applying that within a lot of the leadership development and the coaching that I do currently.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Anyone who takes an interest in leadership, I think they're going to have success in their life no matter what, because I feel like if we can lead ourselves, then everything else is just kind of gravy on the table. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. It's funny you said it too. Cause I always say, lead yourself, lead your life.
Mhm.
It's simple, right? But it's not quite
No,
easy.
no. I mean, the concept is simple, but I always say that the execution is what is most difficult.
Mhm.
So you're interested in leadership. You got some education. What prompted you to take this journey in leadership, and where has it taken you up to now?
Yeah, man, that's a really good question. Like I said, uh, from Grand Rapids, Michigan, I needed to get out of there. I needed something else to do with my life. I needed some sort of path, right? I needed leadership. That's what I needed. So, the military was always on my mind. I knew that's where I was going to get it. I grew up always watching Saving Private Ryan and all those movies, right? When I was growing up, and I was like, maybe I wasn't necessarily going to go into uh, a special operations or combat related role while I was in the military, but I knew it was going to provide some sort of direction for me. So really started my journey in the Air Force, and barely made it in. I was a kid growing up, struggling with ADD, ADHD, just didn't like school. I just remember this the other day. I forgot I was in summer school at some points in time. Like that was embarrassing, I needed something. So I joined the Air Force, and all I needed to do is I didn't care what I was doing. I didn't care if I was scrubbing toilets. I needed something. I needed some sort of direction. So I gave it the best I possibly could on everything that I did. And starting off, that was very average, almost below average when I first came in. But I gravitated towards the leaders that I had around me. It's basic training, like my military training instructor. No, I didn't actually know that at the time, but that's kind of that's who I was gravitating towards. And I started to see that leadership in my life. So, I go to our technical school. I'm at Keesler Air Force Base down in Mississippi, in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I go through my training. Again, I'm kind of barely making it by, but I'm still just the next day, the next meal, whatever I need to do to get by. As I'm going through, learning about my job and my trade in the military, I'm studying my skills and all those good things. I start getting, I'm starting to get the job. I'm learning the job more, and next thing you know, I'm getting promoted, right? So then, you start off that E1. I started off as an E2, right? So E2, E3, right? You're just kind of learning the ropes, and then next thing you know, I'm becoming, I'm an E5, and I really started thinking about leadership at that time. I had a really good work environment, like a really good work environment, like probably the best work environment that I've ever had. Just the morale was amazing. I felt like it was so good that I actually I got a little cocky in my position. In fact, where um, you know I thought I knew everything, right? Because I started learning more, and I had leaders who had my back, right? And I kind of took that a little bit too far sometimes. But you learn when you're a bit younger, right? But
Yep.
with that being said, is I had that leadership there. I had people who pushed me, who actually cared for me about who I was and how I was growing. They saw that potential that I had, and they nurtured that, right? And then, I'm sure you can write this in some way or some form. You uh, you PCS, right? So permanent change of station or permanent change of duty. I basically was, I had a permanent change of assignment somewhere across the street to a different unit. Walk into that unit. Hey, Sergeant Lynn, welcome to the suck. Right? I'm like, oh, okay. Like, what's going on here? So
That's what.
I come in. I'm kind of I grow into this non-commissioned officer. Um, I grow to become non-commissioned officer, in my technical trade, and I move into a different unit, and I'm welcomed with this just poor morale, poor leadership, zero communication. Nobody likes being there. Like it comes down to basically the day of you're sitting there behind the wheel of your car, right, and your hand's sitting on the steering wheel, and sun's coming up in the morning, and you're just like, all right, it's another day. Let's do what we have to do, right? But I'm an NCO at this time, and I want to know what can I do to be a part of the solution instead of the problem? How can I be a better leader, right? Like obviously the last workplace I was at, I really loved being there. Everyone loved being there for the most part, right? Not everybody, but for the most part.
Sure.
And the people who I worked with are awesome. And then I go to this next place and it's awful. Nobody wants to be there. There's inventory problems, just money, like they don't know where the money's at. They don't know where assets are at. Like the leadership is upset, and then you have the lower enlisted who are also upset because they're not being communicated to. The NCOs are in the middle, just extremely confused. So okay, well let me start learning about leadership. Let me understand why. What was the reason why I enjoyed working at my last unit compared to the other one, and that's what really sparked the journey. So I started picking up some books, and I'm learning about leadership, right? The basic stuff. I think one of the first books I read wasn't really a leadership book, but it's called Spartan Up by Joe DeSana. I think he's the CEO of the Spartan races and like the Tough Mudder
Mhm.
now. But I read that book and I'm like, okay, well, that's more about personal development. And everyone picks up the Extreme Ownership book. That's a popular one. I start learning about that. I'm like, okay, this is making sense. And next thing you know, I'm three, John C. Maxwell books, Simon Sinek books, all that good stuff. And I'm like, I'm reading all these books on leadership, and it's helping, right? It's helping me become a better leader, become more self aware. But might as well get some sort of like credit out of this, right? So I'm like, the military provides, the Air Force, they have tuition assistance, and I know the army does too. It's a little different on both ends, but I'm like, okay, well, let me finish my associate's degree, which was in information technology. And I was like, let me finish that up. I only have a couple classes left, and I'll start into this new program. I think it was called the ABC like AU program or something, where basically like they take that associates that you got from the community college of the Air Force, and it's automatically like rolled into a bachelor's program. So you essentially have 2 years left of school, which is with accreditation and things like that, it can be a little tricky. So that worked out really well. So I go to a school and enroll into an organizational leadership program, right? And I'm like, okay, well let me do this. Go be a full time student while I'm a full time NCO, right, at the same time, and let me see if I can make this work, right? So it's a lot of a lot of lunches sitting in my car with my laptop, doing the work I need, that I need to do during the lunch break. Come home, more schoolwork, right? Trying to balance both of those, and it was like that for, to be honest, about 7 years, right? Just doing that, but I started learning about leadership a bit more to have a discussion with classmates, and a lot of my classmates were people who were retired from the military or were in some sort of managerial leadership position. So we were learning from each other, right? And I was learning from them, and all those good things. So that was really good to have that side by side, right? Where I'm going to school and I'm also doing the job and I'm applying them both at the same time. I like to call it the scholar-practitioner approach, right? Um, and I deploy a couple times. I deploy to I go to Jordan. At that point, I wasn't necessarily in a leadership position. Then my second deployment, I go to Israel. That was my first real kind of leadership test, you could say, where I had a group of, I think, like six people who were six guys who were working for me. Great people, right? Without them, I couldn't have done what I did. But I was trying to do my best I could to navigate, that how to be a good leader to my people in this deployed environment, right? Because we're working long hours, the morale is starting to tank a little bit, but like, like what can we do to have a little bit of fun, and working with my leadership to maybe let's get a little bit of time off, like how, what can I do to help make my team look a little bit better, right? Coins are a big thing, and getting coin is a big thing in the military. So like having that recognition, like just trying to strive towards something towards that. Like it wasn't about me anymore. I didn't want that stuff. It's like you want to give that stuff to your team and let them know you actually care about it, right? So, I finish up, and even during this time too, it's I'm getting ready to get married at this time too. So it's just like there's a lot of things going on at this time, but um, I learned a lot about where I was at. I was at Robins Air Force Base, combat communications, so fifth mob, right? Hua, if anyone's out there. Um, but went up to Washington D.C. I worked at an agency called White House Communications Agency, and that's where I really got to kind of test my leadership. I had to actually take a step back, where you're working at an organization like that, where at one unit maybe you are a supervisor, but then you go to another unit, and then you go back to that technical trade, that technical skill again. So I had to kind of like take that back a little bit, and it was more about not who I was leading necessarily, maybe through influence, right? But more about leading yourself, and trying to lead, manage up, right? For example, like working for my managers who I was working for at the time, and my senior enlisted leaders, and also my commanders and stuff like that, and just really trying to help them out while supporting the mission of the White House, which is a no-fail mission. So it can be fairly stressful, especially when you're actually out in the field doing the job, right? Like there's a lot of half of my job was kind of behind the scenes and working with a lot of vendors and doing a lot of contract negotiation, and then the other half of it was it's kind of like boots on the ground, like you're right there, setting up all the equipment. But again, still, just going to school. I was like, I kind of finished my bachelor's. Like I had tuition assistance is still available from the Air Force for your master's. Might as well still do it. So, I get into industrial organizational psychology, and at this point, I'm still not paying for anything, right? The military's paying for it. I'm working full time. Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's kind of stressful, but like it's there, right?
Mhm.
And I learned about the industrial organizational psychology side through a class I took, my bachelor's program, and that there was a class called industrial organizational psychology, which really what that really means is understanding how organizations work, understanding how teams work, leadership practices. It's kind of like that, like it's in a whole, kind of like just leadership consulting, those kind of things. That's really what IO psychology is, but you start really getting down into the quantifiable levels. So I go through that program. It took me a year to finish, but I took a course specifically on coaching. Which coaching, I was like, okay, this is interesting, right? And I didn't really understand what the differences was between coaching and consulting, but when I go through both. They're both separate classes. Consulting first, okay, it's pretty simple. You basically just tell someone what they need to do, and here's how you fix it, right? But coaching was a little bit different. Coaching was something that you not even necessarily influence, but you're really guiding somebody, right? But you're helping them guide their own thoughts. You're not your hands kind of just behind their back, just kind of gently kind of moving them towards a direction where they want to go, but they want to go left, they want to go right, they want to take a step back. That's their decision, right? But you're ultimately helping them get to their goal, and that goal can change. So the fact that coaching was more of a journey was something that really inspired me, and through research too, like it's something that sticks. you can tell someone what to do, but how much are they actually learning? When someone's going through coaching, yes, it's a hell of a lot harder for them to learn and progress when they're essentially setting different milestones and goals for themselves, but they're working through that and they're doing that on their own and they're learning so much more throughout the process. So that's kind of what inspired me in the coaching space. And this is still while I'm in the military. So, while I'm thinking, okay, well, I want to get into this space. I don't really know where to go. I'm still working in this kind of this technical trade role in a leadership position, but I really want to move towards this. Like, how can I help develop other people? So I reach out, send an email on one of our internet systems to one of our executive coaches that we had at the White House Communications Agency. I asked her, I said, hey,
Oh,
I'm like, I'm a staff sergeant at this time. I'm 85. She's a full bird colonel. I'm like, hey, look, I'm just going to ask, like, can you talk to me more about this coaching, and would you be open to coaching me? I just kind of put that out there, right? It's kind of like, my mind was, this is saved for the SESs. This is saved for the lieutenant colonels. This is saved for the E9s, right? This isn't for me.
I was just getting ready to say, it sounds like you were a little bit more spoiled working up there than you probably should have been.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yes, 100%.
Get that on the line.
Oh no, I tell you what. If anybody can get an assignment, who's it gets a joint service. Anybody in any branch can go there. Maybe Space Force. I'm not sure if you're allowed there yet. You weren't. I'm not sure where that's at now, but it's a great assignment. It is such a good assignment, whether you decide to stay in or you decide to get out. It is White House Communications Agency is phenomenal, and it has 100% pushed me on the trajectory of where I needed to go with my life. But the thing is you had to put yourself out there. You had to raise your hand and say, I need this, I want help, and they will listen. No one's going to spoon feed you anything. They're going to try to help, develop you to become a better tradesman at your craft and your job. But if you were trying to move into a different direction, that was the one thing about this agency that was different than the entire military, is they were open to doing things a bit unorthodox, right? So just amazing organization. But anyways, I reach out to this colonel and she's like, yeah, like, come on over, come meet me downtown, and I'll coach you. And I was like, and I wanted to know what coaching is about. I wanted to know what it was like. So she coached me for about, I think, 6 to 9 months. And I was like, this is really interesting, but it's also going to be like something that's going to be hard to learn. So, I did a little bit of practice coaching with some people within my agency, some people with some friends, to just kind of get a feel for it. And it was clunky. Like, I was not good at it at all. So additionally, on top of that is, I'm working out at the gym, at Lifetime Fitness in Fairfax. And I bump into my current mentor now, and I hear him in the locker room over talking. We didn't know each other. And I hear him over talking at the time, and he says, he's like, yeah, I'm coaching, so and so, this client, that executive, this manager, this VP, this and that. Again, I'm like, all right, let me just shot in the dark, let's see what happens. Like, I'm just some kid. I'm I think 25, 26 at this time. I'm like, hey, like, I hear you talking about coaching. Can I learn more about that? Can you teach me more about that? He's like, yeah, of course. And there's a kind of a theme that's going on here when it comes to coaching, is coaches are like, they will give their time because they're so passionate about what they do.
Yep.
So, I networked with him, and it was great because I was getting, at this point, my mentor, he's teaching me in a different way. He's helping me get out of that military mindset. Right. And I'm seeing things from a different perspective. I'm seeing things kind of on that civilian side and how things work in the civilian world. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, I might not be staying in. I might be taking this somewhere else. So as I'm, I have a couple of mentors who are helping me out through the coaching process. I'm still, developing as a leader, as an individual in the military. I see, I finished my master's, and I'm like, there's a doctorate program. I'm like, it's a really interesting program. It was a doctorate program in human and organizational psychology. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, I'm a kid who grew up from, in high school, struggled to learn, like, was like, the doctorates are for smart people. Like, I don't know if I'm that smart, but, I'm not the one to let a challenge down either. And I just enrolled, just signed right up. I got a letter of recommendation from one of my commanders, and I enrolled in the program. And it was funny because I text one of my friends. I'm like, hey man, I'm going to do my doctorate. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. He's like, what are you going to do your dissertation on? I'm like, what's a dissertation? you know, I didn't know what that was, you know? So I'm like, he's like, it's basically like, you got to write a book. And I'm like, I gotta write a book. I'm like, okay, well, this is the reason why I had the elephant back here, right? One bite at a time.
Yep.
That's what you need to do.
Yep.
So, you know, I go through all the way, through my associate's degree, all the way to my doctorate. I didn't pay a cent because, you have the VA benefits, and you also, if you're in, please use your tuition assistance because you don't know if that's going to stay there. You do not know if that's going to, there's nothing is guaranteed. Even VA benefits, I would suggest, are not guaranteed either.
And for a certain amount of time after you get out of the military,
yes.
I think it's 10 years you have to use those benefits before they dissolve. So, I mean, take advantage of those benefits while they're available, because they not only might they go away, they will go away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And, I encourage that. And, I think one of the biggest things that you hear, right, is some people are like, well, I'm going to get my bachelor's and then I'm going to give the rest to my kids, right? Which, very respectable, very commendable. And I don't judge anybody on either direction. But my argument is, on the other side, is what if you use that as your stepping stone to grow as an individual, where you can help your kids in college in the future, and you're also growing by the time you have kids and they are going through college. So kind of a little bit in a reverse order. And that's kind of the way I approached it was, well, if I do this successfully, then sending my kids to college won't necessarily be a financial burden in the future anyways. So I just like, maybe it's a bit selfish, it could be. But I decided to use it for myself. And, and even when I wasn't, even when I did finish my doctorate, right, I still had more left. I had like a year left. And if you can, for my friends who are in the military, who are out, like you can work with the VA where you can get up to 48 months of schooling, where, like I enrolled in the Montgomery GI Bill. You get paid your monthly stipend. So on top of when you're already separated, you're getting paid monthly for going to school. That's already paid for. And then once that is your last day, that very last day when you're about to use it up, you apply for the post 9/11 and you get additional 12 months on top of that. And that's going to save you, a bunch of money. And so, just continue to use my VA benefits, right? And it just really wanted to explore leadership and what I can do better, right? It's, there's an understanding of leadership at a kind of you could say a fundamental, a surface level, like, how you lead a team, but there's also like a strategic level. And that's where the education really came in is how can you measure this? How can you measure what good leadership? How can you measure why servant leadership, for example, is maybe a bit better than transactional leadership or transformational leadership, right? Those are some big words out there. And I think like empathetic leadership is another one that's kind of coming out. It's another buzzword that's going around. But like, how can you measure that? And then when you're trying to help other leaders understand why this style is better and why you're building an entire training program around, let's say, servant leadership, you have some sort of data that you can grab onto. And that's really what the education part is about. Now, you learn, right, I think I would say in the beginning, what good leadership is and kind of how to enact that. But when you go beyond that, you're really diving deeper under what leadership is and why it actually works the way it does, and even at a psychological level too. So you can say I'm an organizational psychologist too, when it comes to measuring different types of leadership styles or training, for example, like, is training being effective? So that it really kind of helps just bring everything and move everything forward when you're training different leaders and you're trying to present a case for maybe a new leadership development program. So that's like, I mean, the education isn't done, right? So I'm always a forever learner. So I separate out of the military at this point. I'm like, you know what? Like, the agency was really good to me, but when you're in the military, if I go back, I'm going to go back to my trade job. And I really don't want to do that. I want to take this leadership development journey and I want to help other people, because if you can impact one leader's life, then you potentially impact maybe their team of 4, right? Maybe that's not that many, but then they have families they're going back to. Maybe that's additional 20 people, right? Now, what happens if you have a class of 30 leaders and you help change their mindset on how to have a conversation um, uh, with their vice president or with a team member who's struggling, right? And you make that impact. You are making an impact on an exponential level when
Mm-hmm.
you're making a difference with um, when you're training leaders, and that's kind of that's the way I always saw it too. But the training is great, doing like leadership development trainings and having 20, 30, 100 people that are in and they're going through some sort of leadership development training. But that one-to-one coaching is kind of really where I kind of found myself enjoying it the most. So that's when I decided to go to University of California, Davis. They have a really good coaching program. It's all online. So basically got out of the military and then started a job and then went to UC Davis like right after that online and went through a coaching program. And that was out of all the training that I did through leadership development, that coaching program, which is also International Coaching Federation certified, which is very important if you're looking to take your coaching journey far. That coaching program was amazing. You connect with a really good cohort of people. We're still connected to this day. We have emails that we send to each other. We reach out to each other for assistance on different resources. But really, it puts you into a different mindset, because a lot of the times when you're coaching, and you hear this in the coaching community, the advice monster, and someone will be talking to you about a situation they're going through, and that advice monster, right, is right in the back, just standing there looking at you, and it's like, just tell them what they need to know. Just tell them what they need to know. And that's probably the number one thing that I hear a lot of newer coaches, they struggle with that, because they want to be like, I just want to help you. And it comes from a really good heart. But at the end of the day, it's not helping the client the most to develop as an individual.
It's not coaching. That's a consulting
Yeah.
approach. It's almost
Yes.
like I don't know if you've heard the word coach consulting, but that's where that kind of leads from, where you do a little bit of the questions based, or I like to call it an empowerment model, to help them figure out to kind of lead them to their own solution, but you're advising them all the way. And if you continue to do that, then instead of them coming to their own conclusion, they're going to be relying on you. And that's the wrong answer. You don't want people to be relying on you. You want to get people to a point where they understand now how to draw their own conclusion and move forward without having somebody there. But that coach is always going to be a valuable mentor that they can come back to if they're needed.
Yep. Yeah, it's a dance. It really is, and it requires a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot. And for someone who's both of us who are in the military, right? It's a lot of it's just drink water and press on, right? That's kind of like, that's just kind of how how it is, and how it was. But it's noticing the tones in someone's, maybe the very subtle shift in a tone, or maybe when someone looks away, maybe there's a thought that's coming up, but it's being very present with that individual. And you can kind of notice how I'm slowing down my voice. It's like, you want to create that space for the individual, where, in the military, it's go, 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 go all the time. So that's kind of like, that's one of the biggest struggles, but it's also the most impactful for an individual. And especially when, you think about, when's the last time you sat down with somebody and had a conversation that was completely uninterrupted. Your phone wasn't going off, your emails weren't going off, and you just were completely focused on a problem that you want to solve, and you got it out of your head. You have all these thoughts that you have, but you got it out of your head, and you talk with someone about it who can help guide you and move you forward towards whatever goals you want to pursue, right? And then have that direction. I mean, like, and Christmas is coming up, right? So imagine if you have a goal and you're like, I want to start a business, and I want to make $1 million in revenue when I first start this business. And I want all the plans written down right in front of me so I can follow these steps and start executing them. Right. Everyone wants that. Everybody wants that, right? But it's not that easy. But the thing is with coaching is it helps you develop that plan. You're not going to have it right up in front of you at that very moment, but that plan is going to be your plan. And that plan is going to be customized to you and what you want to do and how you want to execute on that plan. And
Yep.
that's what makes it powerful because it works just for you. You know, some people would say like, oh, coaching is kind of like therapy. No, it is not. Look, so my type of coaching, I mean, there is coaching where it can cross the lines, but there's also a code of ethics. And like, like, I'm not a licensed therapist, right? I'm a psychologist. I'm not a licensed therapist. You know, I can't work with you if you have if you have trauma. We might recognize that through coaching. Like you can see that through coaching. There might be something there and we see it, but we're moving forward with a goal. And I can refer you to a therapist, right? As a coach, you can do that. And they can, the therapist can work with you on that. And I can work with the therapist too, if needed, to kind of on some things that the individual is working through. But the goal for coaching is to help you achieve your goals, whether you set them up front and you have them and you achieve them, or they change. Like maybe they change within a month after a coaching relationship. But ideally, it's completely customizable to what you want and where you want to go.
Yep, I agree. Actually, it's interesting you mentioned that kind of ethical dividing line between coaching and therapy. Remember that course I was telling you about the last time we talked? That's getting ready to come out for me. Well, it's going to be February now, but actually I worked with a therapist to develop that program, and it taught. So really, it's a mindset coaching model that kind of skims that line of therapy just to help people build a positive mindset, because really that's what most of my clients, most of a lot of the other coaches that that I have in my network, and I'm sure you as an organizational development person, that's the biggest issue a lot of people have, is that they're holding themselves back. That crucial conversation, they can't have it because they're telling themselves something that's probably false. They made it up or they heard it from somebody else. But pushing through that, there are definitely tools that you can put in your tool bag to kind of help you along that journey. And a lot of these things they teach in cognitive behavioral therapy, but if you extract very specific things out of that and bring it into your coaching model, it's actually very effective. It's very, very effective. And you don't do these things with the people that you're coaching. You explain how it's done and say, when you're struggling, this is a tool you can take. And when you're at a point where you can't move forward, try this. And you can be very specific. And if these things don't work, I'm not a therapist. However, if you really can't move forward and you've tried these tools, then I need to refer you to a therapist, because my coaching program is not going to work for you.
Right. Like, I mean, if you have, if trauma is what's holding someone back, and maybe you wouldn't realize that until you go to coaching, right? Which is still a positive way forward. You're like, I didn't know that, how my dad never played with me as a child is impacting. And I'm just using this as an example, right? I'm not saying this about my dad, right? So, but
sorry, Dad.
Yeah, sorry, Dad. So it's that can come up, and you can, and in a conversation, and be like, like, my dad not playing with me is the reason why I'm so hesitant to bring up this crucial issue that to my vice president, for example, right? Like, there could be connections there, and with coaching, like, maybe you realize that, and you're like, that was a light bulb moment for me. Okay, well, now that I recognize that, what do I need to do next? Right? Perfect. We can move forward. But if someone's like, I really this is really bothering me, that's when the shift happens, right? It's like, we got to explore it. We got to look at it together, and it's using that example too. It's funny because a lot of things in coaching, like, it's a razor thin line, and it can stem into that space. But a lot of things in coaching, I just had a conversation with a friend the other day, just talking about how no matter who you grew up with, where you grew up, whatever environment, that has a direct correlation for who you are. So whether you had, really good parents when you were growing up, And maybe, like you're like, why do I have no motivation? That could be a cause, or you could have someone who is extremely driven. But no matter what, that environment that you grew up in produces the individual who you are today. It's just, it's neuroscience, it's psychology. That's how those things work.
Yep, I agree. We've kind of gone over our time a little bit here, but that's okay. But I do always ask this question at the end. If there is one specific thing that you could share with a mass amount of people that would be a beneficial message, what would that be?
Oh man, that's a good question.
I didn't mean to put you, Johnny, on the spot there.
Yeah. Something that's beneficial for everybody.
Or maybe a piece of advice
Yeah.
that has helped you along your journey.
You know what? I got this. Don't negotiate with yourself. Stop negotiating with yourself. I think that's the biggest thing, and where that really comes from is, I from what I've seen and what I've experienced is people who can make decisions quickly are effective leaders. Right now, like obviously that there's a major decision that needs to be made. You know, you should spend time on that, right? Don't go out and start buying a house, or don't go out and open up an entire new division just because you want to, right? But it's really, in your personal life, try not to negotiate with yourself, because sometimes you get lost in the weeds, and you're not moving forward in the direction where you want to go. And that's really kind of what I try to help my clients do is, within my business is help them move forward and take that next step, because you might just end up getting stuck in a loophole, right? And so the best example I can give with that is when you wake up in the morning and you set that alarm, don't hit snooze, don't negotiate yourself, wake up and start your day.
Take massive action. I love that. That's something that I always recommend to people. As a matter of fact, one of my taglines over here is that success loves speed. So, I mean, that kind of goes along with that. And I think the best thing that I could pair along with that piece of advice is that your story is not somebody else's story. So stop comparing your journey to somebody else's, because it's not the same.
No.
And when you start second guessing yourself, which is that negotiation with yourself, when you start second guessing yourself because of something that happened with somebody else, or something that you witnessed with somebody else, you're going to be less likely to move forward at all. And that doesn't help you.
Yep, exactly. And one last thing before we wrap up, just because I want to take that thought that you just said,
sure.
Is, that was one thing that held me back. So I learned that lesson, right? I learned that lesson, the hard way when I transitioned out of the military, because I got another job, and I felt like I wasn't totally adequate. I felt inadequate because I was now in the civilian world, and I don't know how this works. I go to another job. I knew it all along. Why was I holding myself back? Right? Like, yeah, just believe in yourself. So don't negotiate with yourself. You know what you need to know, and the fact that you maybe feel like you don't is a good sign, because it shows that you care.
Yep. That's true. Oftentimes that imposter syndrome comes because, we know we can do it, but then we get nervous and we care about the outcome. And so we hold ourselves back, which doesn't help either. So yeah, no, I appreciate that, Evan. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Thank you, everybody who has tuned in today. I know we've had some people jump in and out, and for those people who stuck with us or watch this later on, I really appreciate it. If you enjoy this content, please like these videos that you see, subscribe to my YouTube channel and Spotify channel. But the most important thing is that if you are interested in hearing more, or if you have a conversation with anything that pops up in one of these videos, please comment below and keep the conversation going, because that's where the magic happens. I'll make sure to tag Evan in this video specifically, so that if anybody has any questions, he will receive a notification when this stuff comes up. So please interact with this whenever you see it. Again, Evan, thank you so much for being a guest, and thank you for all the viewers who have supported the journey. And by the way, on LinkedIn specifically, I just went over 3,000 followers, and that wasn't because I was reaching out to people. That's because people enjoy my content. So thank you for everybody in my audience. And this concludes this episode of Victory Leaders Lounge. We will see you all next time.